Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Total Bases Express Show. I am your host, Austin Spiro. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of the podcast. We are going to continue our greatest of all time series, the greatest second baseman of all time today. And I am joined with my friend, Kevin Miller. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Doing all right, man. Looking forward to talking some second base. And for those who may have missed the show last week, we celebrate Festivus a little bit on the show by making sure that we, like Mr. Costanza, we air our grievances. So we are going to air our grievances with the second base list because from what I can tell, there will be numerous.
There will be numerous, I have a feeling, yes. Kevin just put out another poll. He's putting out a poll series right now of, I guess, essentially it's the best or who you would put your life on the line defensively in terms of baseball players. And you just posted catchers. I believe my choice was Yadier Molina. I chose Yadier Molina. Who would be yours in terms of catching? Who would you put if your life was on the line and that guy could not make an error? Who would you put behind the plate?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different than just best, right? Because it encompasses just no errors. So it's almost like cleanest fielding, right? But with catcher, there's almost no difference, right? So it's not like range is a big factor with catchers. So I would probably go with Molina. I would not have a problem with a bunch of different choices actually. But Molina's probably the guy I'd go with. I almost want to say Johnny Bench because we're not having to think about throwing guys out necessarily, unless you think they're going to throw the ball away.
Right.
But I'd probably just to save myself from feeling really stupid if I made the wrong choice, I'd probably go with Molina.
Yeah, I entertained the notion of Johnny Bench, but I felt like if you're talking about the fielding altogether, because you're right, because there really is no difference when it comes in catcher, when it comes to making an error and general fielding altogether. Molina was just a better thrower. He was much better at throwing it down to second base. So yeah, I'd pick Molina as well. But we're not here to discuss catchers. We'll discuss catchers here later. We are going to discuss the greatest second baseman of all time. So without further ado, let's get started with the greatest second baseman of all time. I think I've got it. Oh, there it goes. And let me. Okay, should be good. You got it over there?
Good.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about the greatest second baseman of all time. Let's get started with our just missed the cut. These are the next 5 people that just missed the cut. In 11th, Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent technically finished in 10th, but he lost in the tiebreaker to our 10th place guy, finishing in 11th place. At 12th, we have Charlie Gehringer. To me, this is the first mistake. He should have been on there. The second mistake is the guy that's 13th, Bobby Grich. And maybe this is necessary. Maybe this is more my Angels fandom, but I think Bobby Grich at least deserves to be closer than 13th on this list. Chase Utley finished in 14th and Willie Randolph in 15th. I think the biggest surprises to me that are on here are Charlie Gehringer and probably Bobby Grich. Do you see it that way, Kevin?
I definitely see it that way about Gehringer. I don't see a world where Charlie Gehringer isn't the top 7, let alone 10 second baseman of all time. And I can see an argument really for Grich, Utley, or Kent, depending on what you're looking for, being in the top 10. Utley doesn't get as much love because his career was a little bit shorter due to injury, not necessarily shorter in years, but shorter in games played because second half of his career, he missed a lot of games, but his numbers hold up really well compared to some of these other guys. I definitely would air a grievance about Charlie Gehringer, an absolute stud, belongs in the top 10. You could replace several different guys that I believe are going to be on this list with Charlie Gehringer, and the list would be better.
Yeah, I agree. Chase Utley, I feel like he doesn't get a lot of love, but do you feel like it also has to do kind of with his reputation as a player? Because I feel like, especially later in his career, he kind of garnered more of a reputation as, I don't know if you want to call it a dirty player, but not necessarily a player that a lot of people were wanting to root for. And I think what I'm more specifically talking about is the I believe, was it Dodgers Mets when he took out
Ruben Tejada, right?
yeah, he took out Ruben Tejada, and everybody was all up in arms over because Chase Utley did that. And personally, I never took an issue with that. I thought that was just a good, hard, clean slide, but it is what it is. Do you feel like maybe his reputation later, maybe a more negative light kind of screwed him over on this list as well?
It could have. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact he actively refused to apologize about it when asked. It wasn't so much like that it got like he just didn't talk about it. It was they were like, "Hey, do you want to apologize to Ruben Tejada or say anything to him?" And as far as I remember, and if anyone out there remembers differently and wants to correct me, feel free. But as far as I remember, he actively declined to do so.
Yeah.
And I think if he would have done that, even if it was like, I don't apologize for making the hard baseball play, but I apologize for what happened. Like, I think even if he did it like that, I think he would have had a better reputation because honestly, the first half of his career, Chase Utley was well loved, I believe.
Yeah.
Not just because he was really good, but also I think people appreciated his personality and his off-field charity work and things like that. But yeah, I do think the hard slide on Tejada, and I believe there was another hard slide at some point.
There was two. I remember the one on Tejada because that one was in the playoffs. But
right, did he break the leg of the Pirates utility guy? I don't remember his name.
I don't think that was him.
That wasn't him. Okay,
I don't think
I couldn't remember who did that.
I can't remember either. We'll have to look it up later. So those are the first five that just missed the cut. Jeff Kent, Charlie Gehringer, Bobby Grich, Chase Utley, and Willie Randolph. Let's get to number 10. Number 10 is Detroit Tigers star Lou Whitaker. Lou Whitaker spent 19 years in the bigs with the Tigers from 1977 to 1995. Played 2,390 career games. That's 91st all time. Good for a 118 weighted runs created plus, a 68.1 WAR. He appeared in 5 All-Star games, was the 1978 Rookie of the Year, won 3 Gold Gloves and 4 Silver Sluggers in his 19-year career with the Tigers. Lou Whitaker starts off our list at number 10. I guess I could do with Lou Whitaker at number 10. The 118 weighted runs created plus kind of takes issue with me, but he's got better numbers than some of the other guys that are ranked a little higher than him. Lou Whitaker at number 10. What do you think, Kevin?
Whitaker's a hard guy to rank for me. And I feel this way about a lot of guys who have a similar career path. And what I mean by that is Lou Whitaker was never elite. And what I mean there is that he was never the best player at his position. And he was never, a top 10 player in baseball, but he was really good for a long time. And it's hard to balance longevity and peaks when you think of all-time lists. But I think, and I think this is correct, I think we generally favor peaks as long as some longevity exists.
Yeah.
And Whitaker's peak just wasn't as high as some of these other guys.
Right.
Not to take anything away from Sweet Lou. I like him. I probably, if I were to redo my list based on everything that I've researched since then, I would probably have him about number 10, maybe 11, somewhere right there. But it's tough. It's tough to think about Whitaker being number 10 while Gehringer, for example, another Tiger, is 12th, right? Gehringer is 12th. Yeah. And so I can't be okay with Whitaker 10 if Gehringer's 12.
Exactly. So speaking of his, speaking to his consistency on Baseball Reference, you can look up OPS plus, and OPS plus is essentially, it's a stat where it's normalized based on era and league play and ballpark you played in and stuff like that. So it evens it out across the board. You're looking for 100, or you're looking for higher than 100. Anything at 100 is league average. Anything below 100 is below league average, and anything above is above 100 is above league average. In 19 seasons, Lou Whitaker was only below 100 twice. His 1977, where he only had like a handful of at bats, he had 32 at bats. He hit a 67 OPS plus, and then in 1980 he hit for a 69 OPS plus in 568 plate appearances. But other than that, they are all above 500, but they're all within the range of anywhere from 101 to 135. So you're not looking at spectacular or anything, but he's consistently good, right? And I would attest to what you're saying is consistency kind of takes a backseat to a really good really dominant 3 or 4 years, right? Usually we remember that more than somebody who was consistently good like Lou Whitaker.
Yeah, and this thought just came to mind because Fred McGriff just got elected to the Hall of Fame
right
last Monday. I think of Whitaker in a very similar light to Fred McGriff. Obviously different positions, and McGriff had much more power. But McGriff is a guy who I think belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I think Lou Whitaker belongs in the Hall of Fame. But
right.
Fred McGriff did not make our top 10 first baseman's list, and I think that's probably correct.
Yeah.
Maybe Lou Whitaker should have been just a touch lower. Somewhere from 10 to 15 sounds right to me. If he makes the top 10, 10 is the spot. I don't think he can be any higher than this.
I would agree with that as well. I think if Lou Whitaker was anywhere higher than 10, especially with some of the other second basemen that didn't make the list, I think it would have been an issue. Not only do we think he should, or Kevin thinks he should be in the Hall of Fame, so does Melvin. Melvin in the comments is saying that Lou Whitaker should also be in the Hall of Fame. So yeah, well, we'll see, because I believe, didn't he played second and Trammell played short, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
They are like, I think they might be number 1 in terms of innings played together as a middle infield combo. I think they might be number 1.
Look how long it took Alan Trammell to make it. So maybe eventually Sweet Lou will make it into the Hall of Fame. Who knows? Let's look at our number 9 second baseman of all time. Number 9 is Nap. Oh God, Nap. Is it Lajoie? I think it's Lajoie, right?
Yes.
I can never pronounce this correctly. Nap or Napoleon Lajoie played 21 years in the bigs with the Phillies, the A's, the Philadelphia A's, and then the Cleveland Bronchos, who then turned into the Cleveland Naps, which were named after Nap Lajoie. I always think that's super interesting. They named the team after Nap. I think that's cool. From 1896 to 1916, he played in 2,480 career games, which is good for 66th all time. He's 22nd all time in career average at 338. He has a 144 weighted runs created plus, good for 44th all time. He is the 19th best WAR in Major League history, 102.2. He won the Triple Crown in 1901 and is 15th all-time in hits, 3,242 hits. This is my next grievance. Nap Lajoie needs to be higher. He needs to be way higher than number 9. Especially with some of the other people that we have coming up. The fact that Nap Lajoie is down here, I think is a travesty. But I also think the reason why he's down here is because he played he started playing in the 1800s, in the 1890s, and usually the older players, we call it recency bias. The older players kind of get cast to the side as we get farther and farther into history. Is that why you think Nap Lajoie is down at number 9, or do you think he should be down here at number 9?
Nap Lajoie does not belong at number 9.
That's what I
think he should probably be in the top 5. It's got to be the fact that he played so long ago. That's the only thing that makes sense for why he's so low on this list. I mean, when you think about just the numbers, you're already looking at objective statistics that show that he was better than some of the guys who are higher than him on this list. But also when you consider some of the other things, reputation while he played, He was a guy that was viewed as the second best hitter behind Ty Cobb for a few years.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, a cool story about Nap Lajoie is that he and Ty Cobb were neck and neck for the batting title one year. And the player who was going to win the batting title was going to also win a car. And Ty Cobb was ahead by, I think, 5 points on batting average going into the final game of the season. And both players had a doubleheader that day. So Ty Cobb sat out thinking he was going to protect his lead in batting average. And Nap Lajoie proceeded to go 8 for 8 to win the batting title. Dude went 8 for 8 and won the batting title. There was some controversy after, worried about the stats, and so both players ended up getting the car. But Nap Lajoie went 8 for 8 to win the batting title on the last day of the season.
Gotta love baseball. God, I love this game. So I mean, the other thing is, no other baseball player in the major leagues, in major league history, has ever had a team named after them because he was so good. Like, he played on the team that named the team after him because he was so goddamn good. Like, why is he down here? He needs to be up in the top, at least top 5, maybe even top 3. You can even have a conversation with. But come on, I mean, I think the fact that he has a whole team named after him is enough to say, why is he down at number 9? He needs to be way up higher. I for the life of me will never understand this. But
Cy Young even said he's the best right-handed hitter he faced, which is ahead of Honus Wagner, who, is probably going to be pretty high on the shortstop list. And Cy Young said that Nap Lajoie was a better hitter than Honus Wagner.
I mean, to play for 21 years and to have this kind of numbers, I know the game was different back then. I know it wasn't as complicated and you got more wrinkles thrown in today's game. But I mean, baseball is a game of failure. And the fact that you could play the 66th most games of all time and still be tied for 22nd in career average, that's just bananas good. Like, I don't understand. This is my first real grievance. Lou Whitaker or Charlie Gehringer not being on the list, I guess, is my first one. But Nap Lajoie here, come on, you got to have him higher. I don't know. Anyway,
I believe it was the 1901 season, but Nap Lajoie had an 1100 OPS in a year where he hit under 15 home runs and had under 50 walks. Can you imagine how hard it is to have an 1100 OPS in a year where you don't walk or hit home runs?
That's just, I mean, let's see, 1901 season.
Was it 1901?
Let's see, he had a 426 batting average, a 463 OBP, 643 slugging with a 1.106 OPS. He led the league with 14 homers. And he had, led the league with 28 doubles, 125 RBIs, 24 walks.
24 walks and 14 home runs.
In 582 plate appearances. Oh, I love looking at stats from this far back. I love it. It's just bananas. I love it. Yeah, that year he led the league in runs, hits, doubles, homers, RBIs, batting average, OBP, slugging, OPS plus at 198, total bases. Yeah, there you go. 1901. Pretty safe to say, no wonder he won the 1901 Triple Crown. All right, so as much as we don't like that he's down at number 9, he is down at number 9, Nap Lajoie, the man that a whole team was named after him because he was so damn good. Let's go to number 8. Number 8, Craig Biggio. Craig Biggio spent a 20-year career with the Astros from 1988 to 2007. Not only did he play second base, he also played the outfield and he played catcher. He played 2,850 total games, which is good for 18th all time. He hit for a career 115 weighted runs created plus, a 65.8 WAR, which is good for 85th all time. He appeared in 7 All-Star games, won 3 Gold Gloves, 5 Silver Sluggers, and is 26th all time in hits with 3,060. I would rank him maybe I feel like he's just about the same realm as Lou Whitaker, but certainly not better than Nap Lajoie. What do you think about Craig Biggio at number 8?
I agree with your assessment there. Biggio belongs somewhere from 8 to 15, probably in the 8 to 12 range is my thought on it. He was a very good player for a very long time. I
loved Craig Biggio. I loved.
Oh yeah, I mean he and the fact that he could play multiple positions was fun. He was a guy that for numerous years would hit a lot of doubles and 15 to 20 home runs and a lot of RBIs. He hit all over the lineup. He'd hit first, he'd hit second, he'd hit third, he'd hit lower in the order. So he's a fun player and a very good player. But I wonder if maybe we overrate him slightly because of how fun he was as a player. He would steal bases and hit doubles and he'd hit a few home runs. So everybody pretty much liked him. So I wonder if maybe we slightly overrate him because of that.
And I was thinking that, especially with the research that I was doing, and he may be slightly a little bit of a compiler because he's in the top 20 in games played, right? So he played for a long time, right? And he's got a 65.8 WAR, which is 5 wins above the mark that you're looking at of at Hall of Fame consideration at 60. He's got 26 all-time in hits, things like that. He may be a little bit of a compiler. And with that, you're looking maybe at the fact that maybe some of these numbers are inflated a little bit because he played for so long, because you look at kind of his career slash line here at 281, 363, and 433. He doesn't sniff the top 100 all time, although sniffing the top 100 all time is really hard. When you're looking at greatest of all time, you got to be at least sniffing that. And none of those metrics are even close. And the 115 weighted runs created plus, again, it's not even close. He's just slightly above a career average hitter. So, but at the same time, we see a lot of that in terms of second base. Second base was not an offensive position, and still, for the most part, is not an offensive position the way that we see offense. You're not looking for the big power bat at second base. And he wasn't even second base. I mean, I guess he was second base, but I think he was the early version of a platoon, or not a platoon player, a utility player, right? Wouldn't you say he was kind of the early version of a utility player before a utility player was really a thing?
I think that's probably true for the end of his career, when he did bounce around between left field, center field, and second base. I think the middle of his career, he was pretty heavily at second base. He was obviously a catcher when he first came up, but yeah, I could see him being labeled as a utility guy. And everybody, for the most part, everybody overrates the utility guy a little bit because it's a cool novelty. I think that Craig Biggio is a guy who was like Whitaker, very good for a long time, but probably was never the best player on his team. Because Jeff Bagwell at the beginning of his career and then Lance Berkman at the end of his career, he's part of the Killer Bees, which is a very popular offense.
Right.
So I think he's a guy that is very good, probably slightly overrated.
Yeah.
Probably belongs at the back of this list.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As much as I love Biggio, there were definitely better second basemen in all time. And the Baseball Life Facebook group thought that this next guy was better than Biggio. At number 7 all time, we have Eddie Collins. Eddie Collins spending 25-year career with the Philadelphia A's and more the Chicago White Sox from 1906 to 1930. Fun fact, he was one of the only people not to get messed up in the Chicago Black Sox case. He's one of the only ones to be, if I read correctly, one of the only ones to be believed not to participate in the gambling scandal of the Chicago Black Sox. He's 22nd all time with 2,826 games played. He hit for a 333 career average, which is good for 28th all time. 424 on base, which is good for 12th all time. He's got he's tied for 44th all time at a 144 weighted runs created plus, 11th all time in WAR at 120.5. He won the MVP in 1914. He won the World Series 6 times, 1910, 1911, 13, 17, 29, and 30, and his 12th all-time in hits at 3,315. Eddie Collins, another one that I think should be high, or should be higher, but I think it's because, one, he was in that Black Sox. He was on that Black Sox team, and two, he played in the early 20th century. So, what do you think about Eddie Collins at number 7?
Yeah, I think Eddie Collins should be a little bit higher. At first glance, you would think he should be much higher.
Yeah.
But then you've got to remember that Nap Lajoie belongs higher as well, and potentially Charlie Gehringer belongs. I think Gehringer and Collins should be very close together.
Right.
I think five or six, maybe 7 fits those guys, but probably 5 or 6. Eddie Collins was a guy who was, when he played, was the best contact hitter in baseball for a good chunk of his career. Some of it overlapped with Ty Cobb, who you would probably say is a little bit better in that realm. Yeah. But Eddie Collins was, and I don't think this is unfair to say, I think he was the second base version of Ty Cobb in terms of playing style.
Right.
He stole a lot of bases, which don't often get mentioned. He stole 80 bases, I believe, multiple times. He was the first guy to do it in back-to-back seasons, I believe I read, and he was actually the manager on those last 2 World Series teams in 29 and 30. He was a player manager. He barely played at the end. He was pretty much just a pinch hitter and defensive replacement. But that's just kind of a cool thing that he was a really good player, but also led a team to multiple championships as a manager as well. I think he belongs a little bit higher.
I agree. So talking about stolen bases, he stole 80 bases one time. He stole 80 bases in 1910. He stole 81. But I mean, the year before, 1909, he stole 63. 1912, he also stole 63. He stole 55 and 13, 58 and 14, 53 and 17. I mean, the man stole a lot of bases. Overall total, he stole 741 bases in his career. That's a lot of stolen bases. Nobody in their career now is going to be even sniffing anywhere close to 700. So, that is a lot of stolen bases. He has over 700 more stolen bases than he does homers in his career. He has.
Yeah, he did not hit the ball over the fence. I think, what was it, less than 100?
He had 47 homers in his career.
Wow.
But it was a different time. No, they weren't really hitting home runs in that time. It was a lot of doubles, and it was bigger parks. So if you were going to hit a homer, you really had to clock it. So yeah, Eddie Collins, number 7. Let's move to number 6 because we got to get going here. Number 6 is obviously another second baseman. Let's talk about this. Number 6 is Roberto Alomar. Robbie Alomar spent a 17-year career with the Padres, Blue Jays, Orioles, what is then the Indians, Mets, White Sox, and Diamondbacks from 1988 to 2004. He played in 2,379 games played. He had a career 118 weighted runs created plus, a 63.6 WAR, played in 12 All-Star games. He was a 4-time Silver Slugger and a 10-time Gold Glove winner. With Roberto Alomar on this list, I do not want to hear any more people in the Baseball Live Facebook group talk about the character clause. I am not going to listen to any of you talk about the character clause anymore, because if you want to talk about the character clause, we got to talk about Robbie Alomar here. This dude has so many off the field issues. It's not even funny. You got domestic violence issues. He's running around with, what was it? STDs or something.
HIV.
Something like that. He's running around giving it to everybody. He's got domestic violence. He's got sexual assault. He's got everything under the sun. And we're still ranking him the 6th best second baseman of all time. I don't want to hear any more about this character clause. If you're going to put Roberto Alomar in there, I don't know. I cede the floor to you because I know you did some research on Robbie Alomar and you were surprised at how terrible of a person Robbie Alomar is off the field. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed it because the list is very long. And it's not just, oh, he made one or two mistakes and they all got caught. No, he had multiple different domestic violence incidents come up. He had multiple different sexual assault incidents come up. He got sued by multiple women who alleged that he intentionally gave them HIV by not informing them that he was positive. That's not just a small thing that can be swept under the rug. I mean, we can look at his on-field stuff, and that's fine. He's a very good player, an overrated player, but a very good
I agree.
player.
I think he's overrated, and I think the reason why he's overrated is because he has 10 Gold Gloves.
Yes,
I think
he was a very good defensive second baseman. Very good. I don't know if he's 10 Gold Gloves good, but very good as a defensive second baseman. But you look at his offensive numbers, and they mirror Lou Whitaker's almost exactly.
Yeah.
They are a little bit below Craig Biggio in a lot of ways. Certainly below Eddie Collins and Nap Lajoie and Charlie Gehringer and even Jeff Kent, who was a big power guy. I don't see a world where, even if you take the character out of it, I don't see a world where Roberto Alomar is the number 6 best second baseman. So I've got a problem with that. I think you can make a case for him to be on this list. I don't necessarily have a problem with him being on the list. Number 6 is too high. And I got a feeling whenever we do shortstop, we'll have a couple guys who will make the list that we will feel similarly about. But I don't understand Alomar at number 6.
I don't understand Alomar number 6 either. Honestly, I would rank Biggio higher. He's very similar to Whitaker, so I guess we can lump him in with Whitaker. I would not be upset if Kent was higher than him. I would not be upset if Utley was higher than him. To be honest, I think he is in the conversation of number 10, certainly nowhere close to number 6. I don't know. I don't know why he's up here. And then, just on the field play, you want to, we've already talked about his off the field issues. Just on the field play, it was a good career, but it's not number 6 all time. But I guess, just like Corey Richmond said last week, I guess defense matters. 10-time Gold Glove, and that's probably what got him up here.
12 All-Star appearances helps with that as well. A lot of exposure there.
Yeah.
It was especially in the American League, it was a little bit of a down time at the second base position as well. You think about the other second basemen of that era who were really good, and they're mainly in the National League, Sandberg and Biggio and guys like that were in the National League, not the American League.
Right. Not only did he make the All-Star game 12 times, he made it 12 times in a row. From 1990 to 2001, he was on the All-Star team. And then he never made an All-Star team ever again after 2001. So that's it. And he led the league in plate appearances once, in runs once. And that's it. Oh, wait, no. Sacrifice hits and sacrifice flies one time. So there's that. I don't know. I feel like this definitely he's not number 6 worthy, but I don't know. I didn't make the list. Well, technically I did make the list, but Baseball Life made the list. So let's move on. Robbie Alomar, number 6. All right. So we're moving into the top 5. Number 5, Rod Carew. And as an Angel fan, I had to put his Angels picture up there. I know he's in the Hall of Fame as a Twin, but I had to put him up there as an Angel. 19-year career with the Twins and Angels from 1967 to 1985. He played in 2,469 career games. Mind you, a lot of that was first base, but he made the list as a second baseman. He's tied for 38th all-time in career average, and in the top 100, tied for 95th in on-base percentage, 328 and 393 respectively. He has a career with 132 weighted runs created plus, 53rd all-time in WAR at 72.3. He played in 18 All-Star games. Only 1 year that he was in the major leagues did he not play on the All-Star team. That was his last season before he retired. He was the 1967 Rookie of the Year. He won MVP in 1977, and he's 28th all-time in hits at 3,053. Rod Carew at number 5, I feel like maybe he should be a little lower, but definitely a top 5 second baseman. What do you think over there, Kevin?
Yeah, Carew's tough because he technically played more at first base.
Yeah.
It's really close, but he technically played more at first base. I think if you were to say, top 10 players who played a lot of second base, I think, he definitely is there. Rod Carew is one of those guys who was a contact hitter that I think was so good at being a contact hitter that it's impossible to say that he wasn't a great hitter. Tony Gwynn, Rod Carew, those type of guys. He wasn't just some slap hitter that was just okay. His bat to ball skills are some of the greatest ever.
Yeah.
When you think of what was it, the 1975 season, maybe the season where he or 77 maybe, when he absolutely tore the cover off the ball with the I believe that was with the Angels. Might have been his last year with the Twins, but
77 was with the Twins.
So was that his last year with the Twins?
It was his second to last year with the Twins. His last year was 78.
Okay. And Rod Carew, who we learned in the Hanukkah song from Adam Sandler, is a quarter Jewish. Rod Carew is a guy that I think belongs on this list. Where you want to put him, I think largely will depend on how you view him as a second baseman versus first baseman. Because in terms of just sheer batting production, especially, it's hard to not put him in the top 5 or 6.
Right. Yeah. So that 1977 season, he led the league in OPS 1,000 or 1.019 OPS. He hit a total of 14 homers. Yeah. And it's just because his batting average 388, his on base percentage 449. So he had such a high batting average that he could lead in OPS with 14 homers. That's how good of a bat to ball guy that Rod Carew was. He just was that guy. He was Tony Gwynn before Tony Gwynn came around. I don't know. I tend to appreciate contact guys, bat to ball guys, because it's really hard to do that. If you can swing a bat, if you know how to swing a bat, you can run into one every once in a while and hit some homers. But it is really difficult to have that type of bat control and be able to hit the ball like Rod Carew did with as much bat control as somebody as Rod Carew did. So I appreciate Rod Carew's career. I appreciate his style of hitting. Do I think he's number 5? No. But what's funny is, even though he played more first base, I think of Rod Carew as a second baseman. So I would put Rod Carew on the list, but I would certainly put him probably more 7-ish, the 7 range.
We probably think of him more as a second baseman because of how small he was, right?
Probably.
And he's probably not as small as we think he was, but he was definitely small as a first baseman when he moved over there.
And he's not a prototypical hitting profile of a first baseman. Right.
He much more mirrored the hitting profile of a second baseman of the era, except like the best one. He was a guy who you knew was going to be a good hitter. He stole a lot of bases too. He would sometimes hit first, sometimes hit second, sometimes hit third in his career. He shared a lineup with some good hitters, and whether he was knocking them in or he was getting on base to be knocked in by those guys, he was an excellent piece in those lineups. And so I don't really have a problem with Carew at 5 if we're willing to call him a second baseman, but it can't be any higher than that.
Yeah.
I think 5, 6, maybe 7 is appropriate.
Yeah.
But Rod Carew is a great player, great hitter, a guy who probably deserves more credit than we give him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's just because of the way we see hitters nowadays. We see hitters as more power. They need to have more power. And that's just was not his game, but he was still good at it nonetheless. Let's move into number 4. Our number 4 second baseman of all time. This is another one that I have a problem with. Ryne Sandberg is number 4. He played a 16-year career with the Phillies and Cubs from 1981 to 1994, and then again in 1996 and 1997. He played in 2,164 games. He hit for a career 115 weighted runs created plus, has a 60.9 WAR, has 10 All-Star appearances, was one MVP in 1984, was a 9-time Gold Glove winner and a 7-time Silver Slugger. I'm going to let you talk about Ryne Sandberg at number 4 first before I talk about Ryne Sandberg at number 4. Go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your grievance on Sandberg, but I do agree that I think 4 is too high. I think this is a product of being one of the most popular players of his era. There were a lot of years where Ryne Sandberg was an elite player. There were a lot of years where Ryne Sandberg was an average player. And because he was so popular, a lot of times those average years get forgotten. And so Sandberg with a career 115 WRC plus is somehow number 4 on this list when he belongs in the bottom half. That WRC plus is lower than Lou Whitaker's, I believe. And is right around the same as Craig Biggio and Roberto Alomar. But he did have the 1 year where he hit 40 bombs, and that's very impressive. But I think because of that 1 year and his immense popularity, and him playing for the Cubs, a top 5 team in terms of popularity, I think that puts him at number 4 a lot more than his actual production.
Yeah. So in 16 years of Ryne Sandberg playing baseball, 7 of those seasons, he played below average baseball. Metrically, statistically, he played below average baseball in 7 of those 16 seasons. There were many times he wasn't even the best player on his team because he played on teams with Leo Durham, who hit better than him in a number of seasons. He played with Mark Grace, who within a number of seasons hit better than Ryne Sandberg. And at the end of his career, he played with Sammy Sosa, who also hit better than Ryne Sandberg, right? Now, his popularity is definitely what got him up here because he was on a number of the lists that were turned into me. There was a number of them on there. And I think because of the sheer volume of the lists that he was on is a reason why he gets played up this high. But I believe, if I remember correctly, he has the lowest WAR out of anybody on this list. He has the lowest weighted runs created plus out of anybody on this list. He has one of the lowest batting averages. He has one of the lowest, I think he even has one of the lowest on base percentages. And yet he's number 4 on this list. Popularity really gets you places in greatest of all time lists. I think you're right. I think because he was so popular, they forget the fact that there were numerous years where he was just average or below average. There were not very many. There were years where he was elite, but it was very inconsistent. You're looking at 84 and 85. He did really well. And then you're looking at below average, average, and then again in 89 and 90, and even 91, 92, he had a 4-year stretch where he did really well. And then again, below average baseball. So it's very spotty. It's very inconsistent. I'm not even sure you have a real peak here when it comes to Ryne Sandberg. So Ryne Sandberg being this high, I don't agree with. And I could even see him being off this list. In terms of top 10 first base or second baseman of all time. This is the one that I have the biggest problem with, Ryne Sandberg being this high. I could be okay with him being on the list, but definitely not top 4. That's my grievance with Ryne Sandberg. But
yeah, I don't really understand how you can make an argument that he should be top 5. I don't know how that argument really exists.
I don't know either. Just congratulations, Cubs fans. He made it on the list. You showed up. Thanks. So Ryan Sandberg at number 4. Who's number 3? Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is our number 3 second baseman of all time, playing 11 years with the Kansas City Monarchs and Brooklyn Dodgers from 1945 to 1956. He played in our lowest number of games on this list, 1,416. Although when you factor him in, he's 40th all time in on base percentage. He hit for 135 weighted runs created plus. He has a 57.2 WAR. Mind you, he's only 3 wins lower than Ryan Sandberg, and he only played 5 years less. Sorry. 7 All-Star appearances, was the Rookie of the Year 1947, and won the MVP in 1949. I am okay with Jackie Robinson being this high. While statistically, he didn't play a very long career, and his WAR is low because he didn't play a long career. There are definitely other things on here that make him one of the greatest of all time, and it's essentially the impact that he's made on the game. I have no problem with Jackie Robinson being this high on the list.
Yeah, I think you have to have Jackie in the top 5. 3 I don't have a problem with. Some of it's a little bit theoretical with Jackie, with it being a little bit shorter career.
Yeah.
Some of that obviously not his fault. But he immediately comes in and is one of the best players in baseball, to a league that did not believe that most Black players would be able to compete. He comes in and is immediately one of the best players. I do wonder why we so quickly think of Jackie Robinson as a second baseman when he spent a lot of his career at other positions as well. He spent a lot of time at first base, spent some time in left field, third base, even right field. He was a utility guy in a sense as well. I think if you had to pick a position, you're going to pick second base. I'm not sure if he played more at second or at first. I think it's pretty close, but he did come up as a second baseman. So I think that's an important thing to consider. But the play on the field's outstanding. Having a 400 on base percentage, especially in that era, is not a common thing. I think we said it was 40th all time. He's just a great player.
Great player, great ambassador for the game. I have zero problems with Jackie Robinson being up there. In terms of games played by position, he played the most at second base, 745. His next most was third base, 256.
Oh,
so
wow.
he played significantly more at second base. But then you're looking at 198 games at first. You're looking at 150 in left field. And you're looking at 34 at short and 1 game in right. So he did play significantly more of his career at second, but he did play quite a bit at other positions as well.
That's good. I think what I must have been thinking of is if you add up the rest of his positions, it was kind of close to second base.
Yeah.
But still, he definitely played the majority at second base. That's good. Good to know. That makes me feel a little bit better. I believe I had Jackie third or fourth on my list as well. So that makes me feel a little bit better about putting him there.
Yeah, I think you have to put him on here, if nothing else, for the impact that he made on the game.
Agree.
So Jackie Robinson, number 3, rightfully so. Congratulations, Jackie. Number 2, who was better than Jackie Robinson? Who is getting up above Jackie Robinson? Well, the first one, rightfully so, Rogers Hornsby. In my opinion, Rogers Hornsby should be number 1. Rogers Hornsby played a 23-year career with the Cardinals, the New York Giants, the Boston Braves, the Cubs, and the St. Louis Browns from 1915 to 1937. He played in 2,259 career games, is 3rd all-time in average with a 358, is 8th all-time in OBP with 434, and 14th all-time in slugging, 577, in 23 years of playing baseball. He is tied for 3rd all-time with 173 weighted runs created plus. He's tied for 3rd all-time with Lou Gehrig and Barry Bonds. He is 9th all-time in WAR at 130.3. He won the MVP in 1925 and 1929. And in 1922 and 1925, he won the Triple Crown. Rogers Hornsby is not only one of the greatest second basemen of all time, in my mind, he's one of the greatest hitters of all time. I mean, and the numbers don't lie. He's in the top 10, top 15 in a ton of offensive numbers. When you it doesn't matter what you filter and you see Rogers Hornsby up at the top of the list. Rogers Hornsby, though, on our list is number 2. What do you think there, Kevin? Number 2, right place for Rogers Hornsby, or do you think he should be number 1?
I voted Hornsby number 1. I don't have a large problem with him being 2 and our number 1 guy being number 1. I think they are the clear top 2
right
at second base. Although Hornsby was a guy who did bounce around a little bit positionally. But when you just look at the sheer offensive prowess of Rogers Hornsby, it's almost unbelievable, because we don't think of Rogers Hornsby in the same breath offensively as we think of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Barry Bonds, but he's right there. He's right there. He is one of those guys who was outrageously feared as a hitter. And after baseball, or after his playing career, when he tried to get into coaching, it didn't always go super well, because he was so good at what he did. He did not understand how other guys couldn't do what he could do.
Yeah.
Just like how Barry Bonds struggled as a coach with the Marlins due to some personality issues and some issues relating to guys who weren't as talented as he was. I think Rogers Hornsby ran into the same thing, which just goes to show how good he was as a player. I mean, 130 WAR is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. 173 WRC plus is pretty much insane. He was a guy, he walked a ton in an era where only the best players walked a ton, which tells you he was one of the best players, and he was a contemporary with Babe Ruth, Jimmy Fox, and Lou Gehrig, and Ty Cobb, and some other amazing players. I've got no problem with Hornsby being in the top 2, and probably think he should be number 1.
Yeah. So, and not only is he walking in a time where only the good players walk, he is hitting for power in a time when people weren't hitting for power. Right. In the same, this is about the same era as some of the other people we were talking about, the Eddie Collinses, the Nap Lajoies. Those people were not hitting a ton of homers, but Rogers Hornsby hit 301 career homers. In a time where you did not see home runs in baseball. In 1922, he hit 42 homers. In 1925, he hit 39 homers. He did it again in 1929. He hit for double-digit homers in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of his 23 years, in a time where that's not how the game was played. And I would like to see Rogers Hornsby play today with the power that he had. I want to see what kind of power he would have in today's game. That would be amazing for me to see. I want to know how many home runs he would have with the shorter fences and things like that.
Well, and especially when you consider that when he played for the Giants, right, you're talking about a massive field once you're no longer down the lines, and he was known as a gap hitter. So how many home runs did he lose hitting into a deep gap there in New York? I know he obviously spent more years with the Cardinals, Braves, Cubs, and Browns, than he did with just the Giants. But those years, he lost some home runs. He was a guy who he didn't necessarily always play nicely with others, though. I know after his playing career, when he was coaching, I touched on a little bit earlier, but he got fired at one point. Actually, I think it was when he was still playing. I think he was a player manager, and he got fired and sent to another team, and his previous team threw a party, basically a ding dong, the witch is dead type party. Like they did not have to suffer under the thumb of Rogers Hornsby anymore. And I think a lot of his problem was that he didn't understand why everyone else wasn't as good as he was.
Yeah. It's hard being one of the best hitters in the game. It's so tough. Poor Rogers Hornsby. The other metric that I'm looking at here that I think is pretty cool to talk about, in 7 seasons, if I'm counting correctly, 7 seasons. Yeah. In 7 seasons of his 23-year career, he hit 40 or more doubles. So you want to talk about gap to gap hitter. That's a third of his career. He's hitting more than 40 doubles in a season. That's a ton. And I'm looking at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of his 23 seasons, he hit double-digit triples. So, he's not only is he hitting it over the fence, but he's also hitting it in a gap. Just as Kevin was saying, he's a gap-to-gap hitter. So I don't think it's a question that he's one of the best hitters in the game. And top 2, I have no problem with. So with Rogers Hornsby being number 2, who did Baseball Life vote as number 1? Well, I'm going to give it to you right now. Number 1, Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan spent a 22-year career with the Astros, Reds, Giants, Phillies, and A's from 1963 to 1984. He's 39th all-time in career games played at 2,649. He's hit for a cool 135 weighted runs created plus, is a 98.8 career WAR. That's good for 21st all-time. He made 10 All-Star appearances and won the Gold Glove 5 times. Joe Morgan at number 1. If I remember correctly, in the contemporary era, Joe Morgan has the highest FWAR. I could be wrong on that stat. Don't quote me on that. Personally, I think Rogers Hornsby should be number 1 and Joe Morgan at number 2, but I have no complaints at Joe Morgan being number 1, especially with some of the other things on this list that we've seen. Nonetheless, Joe Morgan gets the distinction as the greatest second baseman of all time, according to the Baseball Life Facebook group. Kevin, what do you have to say at Joe Morgan at number 1?
Very similar sentiments to you. I've got no problem with Joe Morgan number 1. I voted him number 2 behind Rogers Hornsby, but Joe Morgan was, he was known as Lil Joe, right? Because he was 5'6", 5'7", but he could have been known as Big Joe too, with how good he was, right? He actually, we don't really think of this, he played more years with the Astros than he did with the Reds.
Yeah,
but he's most well known as being part of the Big Red Machine. And he was, without a doubt, the best player on the Big Red Machine. People want to talk about Pete Rose because he was very popular in his era because he was Pete Rose. And people want to talk about Tony Perez, because he hit more home runs. People want to talk about Ken Griffey Sr. because he's Ken Griffey Jr.'s dad. But Joe Morgan was the best player on those teams, and it wasn't really close. Joe Morgan was an absolutely incredible baseball player. He was in an era where not a lot of guys walked. He walked a ton, and he used that to his advantage as a guy who stole a bunch of bases. He would take extra bases, on balls put in play. A guy that if you think of who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, you would think Joe Morgan is the definition of first ballot Hall of Famer. He's also a really good guy from everything we were able to gather. And he passed away just, I think 2 years ago. But just a really good ambassador for the game, both as a player and as a broadcaster. I know a lot of people did not necessarily enjoy the John Miller and Joe Morgan broadcasts. As a kid, I loved them on Monday Night Baseball. Part of that is just because I loved listening to Joe Morgan.
So you want to talk about all of the players that he played with on the Big Red Machine. I just clicked a random year on Baseball Reference, and the year that I happen to pick is 1974. So that in the 1974 season for the Cincinnati Reds, the starting lineup at catcher, Johnny Bench. First base, Tony Perez. Joe Morgan at second. Shortstop, Dave Concepcion. Left field, Pete Rose. Right field, Ken Griffey. In terms of OPS plus, Joe Morgan beat them all. Not only did he beat them all, he crushed them. By far was the best hitter on the team, right? You've got George Foster coming off the bench, right? You've got And that's just in 1974. I could probably click around on to some of the other Big Red Machine teams, and it'd probably be more of the same thing. With all of these good hitters that we talk about Johnny Bench, one of the best, probably one of the best offensive catchers, one of the best catchers, period. Tony Perez, a good hitter in his own right. Dave Concepcion. I don't believe Dave Concepcion gets talked about a whole lot. And not nearly as much as he should. Dave Concepcion was a good shortstop in his own right. Pete Rose, we talk about Pete Rose all the time being, there's an argument whether is he one of the best hitters of all time or is he overrated or things of that nature. But he's the all-time hit king, and I feel like Joe Morgan he kind of gets buried in that sense. You kind of almost forget that Joe Morgan played on that team. Right. But he was a better hitter than all of them, just like you said. So nonetheless, Joe Morgan, number one. So that's good for Joe Morgan. I'm happy for Joe Morgan. He beat out Rogers Hornsby. I don't think he should have, but he does. So that is that for our greatest second baseman of all time. Do you have anything else to say about the greatest second baseman of all time?
I don't. I think it's a tough list because there were a lot of popular names who played second base who are probably somewhere between 7 and 15 in reality in terms of how good they were, but made the top 10 due to popularity. We had some help in the chat there when we were talking about Ryan Sandberg not being the best player on his team. We forgot to mention Andre Dawson was a better player.
Andre Dawson, that was another one.
Some of those
I
Cubs teams. When Sandberg was supposedly so amazing, Andre Dawson was a better player on that team. And I think we see that with a lot of the guys that made this list. I think the top 2 are spot on. You can flip-flop them. If it were my list, I'd probably flip-flop them, but they are definitely the top 2.
Yep.
And then after that, it gets a little difficult because you got to weigh popularity with the production.
Right. So I'm going to try and pull it up here really quick. I forgot how close the voting is, but if I remember correctly, the voting for second base was not very close. Let's see. For second base, we've got Joe Morgan had 281 points. Then Rogers Hornsby was at 222 points. Jackie Robinson was 204. Let's see. Let's get down to, obviously, we talked about it. Lou Whitaker and Jeff Kent were tied at 61 points. And then Nap Lajoie, 66 points. He just barely beat out Lou Whitaker and Jeff Kent. And then the next one, Craig Biggio, had 88 points. So it wasn't even close. Ryan Sandberg had 188 points. Next guy, Rod Carew, had 154. He was comfortably in 4th place. It wasn't like, 1 or 2 ballots. It could have gone in. No, I don't know. I have Ryan Sandberg is the one that I have a huge problem with. I don't think Ryan Sandberg should have been in the top 5. I could have even argued he could have been off this list, but that's just me.
If you flip-flop Nap Lajoie and Ryan Sandberg on the list, it looks a whole lot better.
It does.
Right?
That would look a whole lot better. I agree with you. Yeah. So I don't know, but that is the list. So once again, we have number 10, Lou Whitaker, number 9, Nap Lajoie, number 8, Craig Biggio, number 7, Eddie Collins, number 7, Robbie Alomar, number 5, Rod Carew, Ryan Sandberg at number 4, Jackie Robinson at number 3, Rogers Hornsby at number 2, and Joe Morgan takes the top as the greatest second baseman of all time. That is our show. We're going to wrap up here. Kevin, you got anything to say? Any parting remarks?
I don't have anything, man, except I hope that our next list looks a little bit better than this one.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So tune in next week. We are going to be talking about the greatest shortstops of all time. That one was a fun list to prepare. And let's see, I'm looking at it right now, and knee-jerk reaction is I've got a couple issues with it, but it looks better than our second. It looks better than our second baseman. I think I have a particular issue with one of them because I don't like them. So we'll see when we unveil the greatest shortstops of all time on the Baseball Life Facebook group on the Total Bases Express podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next week. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.